Guys, this is a video on Gridbox and how to do a layout real quick and how to make it responsive for mobiles. So right now we're looking at a sort of a mock-up. Um, we can discuss the elements that are kind of like missing from this particular mock-up, but that's beyond the scope of this video. I'm just simply going to lay it out in a Gridbox setting. So when you kind of adjust the screen, um, the elements kind of move back and forth. So that's what we're going to do today. So we have the mock-up. Now the next thing I suggest you do is go into Paint and kind of build it out, like in terms of a box. So let's just take a look at a template that I just did a few moments ago. But you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do a brand new one, just because I want to show you the process that goes into kind of building something from scratch. So usually what I like to do is just make this select a rectangle and draw it out. So this represents the container of like the container div that holds all the other divs in it. So I go in and I change the color a little bit, and then let's go back to the picture real quick. So we have title here, subtitle here kind of area. We have like a main body here. Well, this would be considered the whole body. So the picture of the tiger, the text underneath it, and the text on the right of it. And then we have like a navigation / sign in register section over here. So let's say that we're going to put all of this stuff, the header stuff, in one div. We're going to put the body stuff in another div. And then for good measure, we'll just put a kind of like a footer div over here, so that in the future, if we need to add any kind of menus, we can. So let's go back to the paint. We're going to build out a header here. Make it a little bit smaller. We're going to build out the body here, and then we're going to build out the footer here. Okay. So now that's the second level. We had a container. Now we've gone into another level underneath it. So these are like the header divs and the body div and the footer div. And then underneath that as well, there's another layer. So if you go back to the picture, so like there's a header here, there's the sign in items here, and then there's some subheader over here. So let's just kind of mock it up a little bit, maybe the subheader goes here, the header goes there, and then registration goes here. Before I go too far, this particular wireframe is for like a full screen. So once it goes smaller, we'll have to adjust it. Once like the user uses a smaller screen, it'll adjust. But we'll have to do another wireframe for that. So the body. So there's the image. There's some kind of like about verbiage here and some kind of like quote section over here. So what we'll do is we'll put an image, we'll put an about, and we'll put a big section over here. We'll put a big section over here regarding like the quote. I don't know. And then the footer, we'll just make a small div here, but it's kind of empty right now, but we won't worry about that too much. We'll just add it just for good measure. Okay, so we can put a full screen here. Actually, no. Full screen here. Okay, so let's go right beside it and make one for mobile. This won't take too long. So kind of try to replicate a mobile screen here. That's the container div. Then we'll go one step down with the red. That'll be the header. Same. No difference between the other, the full screen version, and then the footer here. But here's where the difference occurs, is when the internal divs kind of switch positions. So we have here, let's just say our title, it'll go in the middle there. Then there'll be like the sign-in section and whatnot here and here. Obviously, like this is more like personal preference than like best practices. I'm sure in terms of best practices, it's a little bit different, but we're doing a very basic wireframe here. And then all of these divs in the full screen version are going to adjust as well. So let's just say we're going to put the image up here, and we're going to, how about put an about paragraph here and another, and then the quote portion over here, and we'll just put another div for the footer. Okay. So this is our mobile version. Okay. So let's take this and put it in our VS Code. So I kind of have the HTML section kind of written out, but you know what? Let's recreate it just because I think it's good exercise for us. So we have our container. Oops. So container. Now we said we have a header, and then we have the body tag here, and then we have the footer tag here. And within those, we're going to add the various divs. So what I usually like to do is header starts here, and then header stops ends here. So that kind of gives me a reference point, like a visual reference point of where all these items are stopping and starting. So body starts here. I just did that real quick with the video pause. So now we're going to add the internal divs here. But before we do that, you know what we're going to do? Let's put header. Let's put body. And let's put footer here. And let's go into the actual physical view of this. I'm gonna close console. I have a tool running here. Let me just let you guys know about it. It's called Live Server. So once if you click Live Server, open with Live Server, it actually opens a version of it on your browser. So here's what we entered. That's better. Okay, so this is what we entered. So it has no CSS elements right now. So now we're going to start adding the internal bits and pieces here. So if we go back to our paint, we'll notice that we had like actually, you know what? Ignore this for now. We're going to go here into the mobile version because we're going to build it mobile first, and then we're going to adjust it so that it appears like this in the full screen version. So mobile first, we have our we did the red portion. Those were the header, body, and footer. But now we're going to go inside and do the green elements. So title, and then maybe subtitle. This is arbitrary names for these kind of things, and then sort of like registration. So I like to add something in the middle of this, just so you know we can visually see this on the screen. And then registration. Oops. So we're gonna go to this guy. Okay. So we're kind of like adding more and more stuff here. And then there's the, so we've finished the header. Now we're gonna go to the body. So let's go to the body here. Let's go to the paint. There we go. And then we have like the image section, and we have like a about section, and then we have like a quotation section. So we have the image, let's write image there. We have an about. Let's write about there. And we have like a quote. Let's write quote there. So we can visually see what's going on. So there we go. And then we have footer, but we're going to leave that alone for now. So now, the important part, we're going to put all the grid elements into it. So we're going to do CSS. So this is SAS, the CSS compiler. So if you don't know about that, I would recommend you go into Visual Studio Code, go to and just SAS, just search for SAS in the extension section. You should be able to find it. Pretty easy to find, and it's a very useful tool, so I recommend that you get that. So the first thing I like to do is remove all the padding and the padding and margins for all elements. So the way you do that is you put an asterisk, brackets, curly brackets, padding 0px, and then margin 0px. Okay, and before I enter, I'm going to go back to this. So you'll see that there's kind of like a little bit of padding there. But if I were to save it, see, it's kind of diminished a little bit, a lot actually. Okay, so the other thing I like to do, and I've written about this in my blog, is use borders. So border one pixel is a great way to kind of visualize all this stuff. So container, border 1px solid. So what does that look like? So we kind of have a border around it now. So we're going to continue to make borders. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make borders around everything. So header, oops, copy, okay, body, and then footer, oops. So we have borders around all the body elements, main elements rather, and then we're going to go inside and make borders around all the other elements. So title, subtitle, and then we have the registration. And then over here as well, so body, so the image tag gets a border, the about tag gets a border, and then the quote tag gets a border, and then the footer doesn't need one. So we go back. Okay, so we got a bunch of lines going on. Okay, now is the moment of truth. We're gonna start the grid section here. So in order to start the grid section, you gotta first write grid. No, display grid. Display grid. That's one. Okay, and then how many columns do we want to give it? So usually what I like to do is I like to kind of follow Bootstrap's theory on this, and they usually have a 12 column template. So we're gonna go grid template columns, and it's usually repeats 12 one after another. So 12 equal sections. So does that change anything? Yeah. Okay. So everything is kind of like squished into one area in the grid. So what we're gonna do now is, this is mobile first, right? So all of these other sections kind of like fall on top of each other. So let's just say we're gonna go to, so the container has one. Now, let's go to Paint. So in order to visualize this, so we made a grid section on the black portion. Now we're gonna go inside and make another grid column thing inside over here. So this is the header, right? So we're going to go to header. We're going to basically copy this. So, well, actually, before we copy that, we have to specify. So in the container div, we've said, okay, I wanna split all of this up into 12 equal parts. So how much of those parts does the container take up. So in this case, we got to specify that the container takes up 1 to 13 sections. So if I go back to that, you'll see everything is bundled up, but the header section takes up all the rows. But there's a cleaner way to write this. It's -1. So why did I write 13 there previously? Because it starts from 1 and it ends up the 12 columns ends up at 13. Like the last column is 13. But an easier way to write that is -1. Now this part, what I recommend is that there is a really great video by Free Code Camp about grid. So if you're confused about the 13, I would look into that. I would watch that video. It's a great video. So anyways, -1 is the way that I wanna write it, just because it is cleaner and you can copy paste it into other sections. So we've specified that the header takes in, on the mobile version, all 12 columns. Let's keep the. Okay, now we want to do the same thing again. We want to bring. So now we want to build a grid inside the header. So we take that same verbiage up here. So we also make this a grid and give it 12 columns. Now, how much does the title take? Title take inside the header. So right now it's taking all of it, but that's because we need to kind of. Oh, okay. So I haven't saved it yet, right? So let me save it. Now you'll notice. Okay, so all of the header stuff. So the header, the title, the subtitle, the registration is all kind of like pushing to the left side. So how much does the title take? Well, the title takes, if I were to just remove this header part, so now we have those internal parts, title, subtitle, registration. So if I go back to title, it takes all of it per our paint section here, paint wireframe here. So the header takes all, I'm sorry, the title takes all of the area. You can ignore these kind of like spaces here. That's just for visualization. So anyways, so I've taken the same 1/-1 here. If we save that, we go back here. So the title takes all of the space here. That's excellent. Okay, now the subtitle and the registration per our wireframe, it takes half and half. So half and half. So basically copy this down. But instead of -1, we don't want to go all the way around. We want to put that at 7. And again, this may seem confusing, but you want to go from 7 to 13. So always one extra. So like the rule of thumb is if it's 12 columns, you go one extra. And then the last one puts you at, sorry, let's visualize that. Actually, you know what? I wanna show you guys what I mean by this 13 here. Just because it was confusing for me in the beginning too. See, if I put 12, it skips. It doesn't go all the way. So 13 is all the way. Okay. So that we have our header section there. Now, per the mobile version, we have our image here, our quote here, and our. So the same thing from the header section we're doing in the body as well. So let's go back to our VS Code and put in the body section. First of all, we have to specify that the container, the body is the second level from the container. So we have to specify, like we did at the header section, how many columns it's going to take up. Well, it's going to take up all of the columns that are available to it. So if we save that and we go back to the live version, so okay, so body. Actually, you know what? In order to visualize it, we have to kind of give it grid. So we have to make this a grid anyway. So display grid, and then grid template columns. Repeat 12 1 FR. So now as we experienced with the header, everything is kind of squished towards the left. So the body. So I'm going to take away this verbiage of the body just because it's kind of getting in the way. So we have all the internal bits. So the image, the about, the quote. Now we want to make the image full width. So grid column 1 dash -1. And then we want the about to be like, actually we should just copy this up here. So 1 to 7. And then the quote will be from 7 to 13. Okay, there you go. All right. So the footer, again, if I go back here, so we put the container, the black portion at 12 equal parts. We put the header to take up 12 equal parts, the body to take up 12 equal parts, and the footer as well. We got to give it 12 equal parts. Now, grid column. As I've mentioned before, I'm just driving this home. You could have written it like 1-13, and that works as well. But the smarter way to do it would be -1. Just because, let's just say that you went up, one day you decided, okay, I'm going to change this from a 12 to a 6 for whatever reason. And then now you don't have to go through each element and say, okay, now I got to change the 12 or the 13 to a 6. Or, if it's 6, it will be 7. But that's beside the point. So now we have basically a mobile version. So in order to make it ready for desktop, so you want to change the view a little bit for the desktop, what we're going to do is we have to start with a media query here. And then the min width, let's put the min width at the min width should be, let's just say 768 px. 768 px is usually like a tablet, but just to kind of like drive home the point, how this works. So for those that are confused about the verbiage min or max, so basically max is from 0 to a maximum of this, and what min is, the minimum is this amount to a max to whatever is the maximum. So the maximum is whatever, but the minimum is 768. And then if it's max, the minimum is whatever, and the maximum is 768. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to put min here, because we want from 768 and onwards, we want it to perform a certain task. So in order to make this adjustment, we're going to copy all of this and we're going to put it down here. Now this is not best practices. I shouldn't be copying all of it, but this is just for kind of visualization. So right now the screen is max width, but since I copied everything down, it's going to look like look the same, right? But let's go back to our paint section here and we'll go on the side over here. Okay, so we have our full screen version. So let's ignore the mobile for now. So we have our header here, we have our subtitle here, and then we have our registration bar on the right hand side. For the body, we have the image, we have that about section, and then we have the quote section on the right here. So there's just really two things that we're going to change. So, you know what? It might be even smarter to delete everything. Yeah. Just start from scratch. Just because it's easier. Like I copied all this jumbled mess down here, and I was probably confusing for some of you. It's confusing for me actually. Let's put that container. So we have it's the same. I still wanted to take the same 12 columns as I specified up here. So since I've specified it up here already, and I'm not changing it, I don't have to I don't have to re-specify it again. That would be just extra code. So the header section is the same again. The header section I've specified 12 columns. I still want to keep it at 12 columns. So I won't change that or repeat it. But now within the header section, we have title. Title is taking all of the width, but in our wireframe, it's taking like half of it. So what we're gonna do now is say title grid column rather. Okay, so 1-7, 1/7 rather. Okay. And now if I were to save that, if I were going to the live version, see, you can already tell it's kind of changing. So let's just say I am going to resize this for you guys right now. I go below. Okay, so that's the threshold. So see, you can kind of see this sort of section moving a little bit. There. Would it be a good idea to kind of give it a background color? Like gray, something that's not too, aggressive. Oh, there you go. So now you can visualize it a little bit better. Okay, so so it's working. So basically, our grid section is working. So I'm going to remove that for now, just because I don't want it to stand out too much. So now we go to our title, our subtitle rather, grid column, and I want that to be also 1-7. 1-7, and then our registration portion, which is over here, I want that to be grid column 1-7. No, it's 7-13 /13. So if we go back to the live version, okay. But see, here's the thing that I want. I want this registration to span, 2 rows, because I want that whole section per our wireframe. It spans, 2 rows. So what we can do here, if I remember, so grid row span 2, and if I save it, okay, sorry, I'm back. I had to kind of just fiddle around with the grid there. So back to where we were, registration. Now we put per our wireframe here, we put it 2 rows, right? So in the full screen version, so we put it 2 rows. So in order to specify, like I wanted to span like all of the rows. So the same way, start from 1 and then -1. So it could be 3, 10, 12, whatever it is. It spans the entire way. Now, if I were to save this and go back to our thing here, it does show that it's done, but that's because I had originally had a border frame over here, so that kind of shows it as, oh, it's a little bit off, right? But let's just say we went up here and gave the header a height of 200 pixels. It's still showing me that, but if I were to take away the border, there you go. Okay, so this entire section is for registration. I'm still not entirely convinced. So lorem 100. Let's do lorem 50. Oops. Actually, lorem 50. Lorem Okay, so it does take up. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't because it's squishing the subtitle. So let me experiment a little bit. Okay, so I'm back. So apparently the verbiage that I had over here of -1 does not work. So see, this is basically, if I were to go back up here and kind of, so this is basically taking up um, just one row because we specified that the whole header was 200 pixels, and I put a whole bunch of lorem ipsum in here. So it's taking up one row basically. But if I go back down here and I put 3, now it's better. So the title takes up, as much as it needs. The subtitle takes up as much as it needs, and then the registration section takes up as much as it needs, up to 200 pixels, like we specified. So if I were to take away the 200 pixels here, I think I'll just go back to auto. Okay, so I'll just squish around until then. Okay, so let me just take away all of this lorem ipsum stuff. And let me just write registration. Okay, now it's better. Okay, so I have a border around the registration. It's taking up two rows. So my bad, that doesn't work. But let me kind of like visualize the 1-3 here. So the top is 1, the middle is 2, and the bottom is 3. So that's why, you go from 1 to 3 for the registration. All right, so we have that sorted out. And then we're going to go into the body. Same thing. So we go back to our wireframe, reference it. Same thing. We're going to do the same thing that we did on the header section and the body section. So the body is the same. There's the image, which will take up 1/2 of the area. And then the about will do the same. About will do the same. So grid column 1-7. And then the quote will be different. It'll take up 7 to 13, but it will also take up 2 rows, 1 to 3. We visualize that. Oh, there we go. Done. And then the footer takes up. The footer doesn't change, so we don't have to re-specify it. So let's go into this guy, go into the inspect tool, and we'll kind of manually adjust it. So you'll notice. There you go. There you go. See? I mean, it's not much of a change, but you can clearly see that it's working. So as soon as you go above there, oh, it changes. Okay, above 768, if you'll notice. There you go. And that's good for you. So before I close, what I would always suggest, you have basically your template made by a designer, preferably, and now you're gonna figure out how things are going to adjust based on the size of the screen. Your next step is to obviously make a wireframe. So going to Paint or any other tool you might have, going to Paint, wireframe everything out, make sure you like the layout, and then do like dummy text. Go to HTML, write dummy text, and then go into your CSS and actually do it before you put in any kind of like hard material. Just because if you put in if you style out a title and you put all the CSS into it, it's kind of difficult working your way backwards and making it responsive. And the other thing about responsiveness is make it mobile responsive first and then do all the other stuff. So, the top section, I've not specified an amount, the width size of the screen, but it is for mobile. And then I go down and I work my way up. So this is for tablets, and then another one for for whatever screen you may have. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know there was a little bit of jumping around. It was a learning experience for myself as well. But thank you.